Hi, my name is David Gedalovich, and this is Leaders Around the World, a space where I interview leaders that are changing the world in their own way. Today, I'm with a really good friend of mine, Mikey Perez. How are you, Mikey?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on your show, David. It's an honor.
It's a big pleasure, Mikey. I haven't talked to you in a while. I see that you're doing great things, and it's great to have you because it's also going to be good for me to know what you're up to. So tell me a
hmm
little bit more about yourself. Where are you from? Where do you live right now? And what do you do? What's your business? Your idea? Your NGO? What are you doing?
Right. So I was born in Montreal, Canada, a long time ago. And you and I met, as you know, in Yeshiva University in New York City, where I was studying mathematics. But I was going back for my second degree. So I studied computer science initially back in Canada. And the day I finished my last math exam, I took a flight to San Diego, and then I've been on my own since. So I've traveled to quite a few places, but I currently live in Seattle, Washington. And I'm working on a few tech startups and media startups, as well as I have a handful of projects. So I would love to talk about those.
All right, choose one or two and tell us a little bit more about them. Your favorite one.
Great. Yeah, so it all started off, and maybe this can be relatable to listeners, but it all started off with no plan. I just loved making websites. So I would be up in my room all night making websites. I was a pretty good coder, but my design skills were lacking, and I had a designer. So, just how the tech sphere works, you're constantly forced to push yourself outwards. And if you don't, it's the death of you, really. And this applies to every domain. So as a programmer, the second you get comfortable with a specific language, you're already losing out to other people who are catching the newest and latest technologies. And that applies also from the domain of work that I was doing. So I was expanding from programming to designing, and I quickly discovered that I'm actually a pretty good designer. And then I was doing whole websites. And then I realized that I was losing money on transactions by sending people elsewhere. So people would come to me for the website, but I would send them out for the web hosting. I would send them out for the marketing. I would send them out for the social media work. And then, I decided to expand outwards. So, go forward a few years, I don't just do websites. I've got a website company, a cloud computing company where we have cloud services, and I have a marketing company where we do all sorts of paid ads and ad campaigns, and we do really interesting social media marketing. And that's expanded outward, where we help people get on the news, we help people get published, we help people get on the big screen. And now it's kind of expanded into a service where it's all encompassing. And we work with a lot of entrepreneurs, public figures, actors, singers, and we help those with skills get noticed online. And we do the whole A to Z, from the technical stuff, getting the infrastructure set up online, to really getting them to where they want to be in their professional career.
That's amazing, Mikey. How did you get into that? How big is your team right now? How did you start to get your own team together?
Right.
From a computer engineer, a genius in math and in programming. Now you're a big entrepreneur dealing with big, important, famous people. How did you learn how to do that?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think the key that I learned is the person I know the least is myself. Especially diagnosed at a very young age with ADHD, with a litany of learning disabilities, and not allowing the narrative to be placed on me from those who I looked up to at the time, those in authority. And the trick here is to have confidence to diverge off life's well-worn path and to still be confident it'll work out. And it's really hard to look forward and to see those steps. But once you get to where you're supposed to get to, and once you weather that storm, looking back, it becomes something that gives you happiness and confidence deep down. And once that becomes an emerging pattern, you become more comfortable to constantly step out of your comfort zone, knowing that it'll all make sense. There's a little, something inside you that helps navigate you. And if you're willing to, and if you're confident enough to do it for long enough, you do start to see results. So starting out, I just made websites, and I wasn't, into the social sphere, but now I'm extremely passionate about networking. I spend half of my day doing free work. I still turn down paid work left and right just so I can do free work, which includes networking, which includes jobs that don't necessarily have short-term returns, because those are the most fruitful endeavors. They really are. So a big, underlying philosophy of how I function and how I build relationships is built on the premise of give, and then you ask. I first and foremost do not focus on making money. I focus on establishing value to those around me. And then I let the law of reciprocation take its course. And then people start to give back what they feel. And that honestly has been a recipe for creating long-term relationships and the ones that actually matter. And if you come into this process with a short sight, what happens is you will turn down good opportunities if you're strictly calculating how much money this transaction will make you. So when I started out, specifically here, I wouldn't even reach out to the people. I would go on their website, I would see they have a good following, they get lots of traffic. Over the weekend, I would just rebuild their site for them. And I'd have to do this a little methodically, but I would reach out to them and say, hey, listen, I saw your website, it needed some work, I redid it for you. You can have it. Now, people would say you're losing money off that, right? That's a $3,000, $4,000 job you're doing for free. In hindsight, that was a very small price to give up for a relationship that has been very fruitful for me. And this specific process might not work with an individual every time, but it works enough times where if you do it enough times, you start to get a strong fan base, you start to get loyal clients, and then you start to be able to engage in the market competitively.
I love your idea, and I love the way you do business. I'm a big believer
Yeah.
of that also, and it works like you said, and the satisfaction is much bigger when you get reached out and they appreciated your work, and they
Mhm.
look for you because they know what you do, and they know what you can
Yeah.
accomplish. It's great. I'm very happy to hear that. Tell me a little bit about one or two of the websites that you manage. I know that you're doing something with Israel News and another one
Yeah.
of biology or like crazy scientific things. And you're also
Yeah.
into that. Tell me a little bit about one or two of those.
Sure. So I have Israel Now News, which has an online following, one of the biggest on Facebook now for Middle Eastern Israel news. And I think you and I talked about that in our early days at Yeshiva University. So that was an idea early on. And I reached out to people. Not too many people were interested in doing it at the time, but I kept at it, and it took off the end of 2019. So we now have, I think, 24 or 23,000 active users on the group, and the page sites have over, I think, 7 million views now. We're actually currently redoing it now for a longer. We have bigger plans that we're implementing right now, and hopefully they'll be active in the next week and a half or 2 weeks. So that's one project we're working on. But the truth is, we do a whole lot of stuff now. Not just so we work with brands, we work with small companies, we work with higher profile people, and all these services that I've built independently kind of mesh together. So, for example, we work with a lot of musicians and singers who are trying to get noticed online. So we would go ahead, we would build their website for them, we would take care of their hosting, we would use some really interesting social media tactics to get them noticed on Instagram. We would help get them in the news, and ultimately we would help get them verified. We would help get them on Wikipedia, get them all the authority online that they're aiming for.
That's amazing, Mikey. Tell me a little bit about the Nomad Lifestyle. I saw an article about
Oh,
it, and I was very interested to
yeah.
see that you decided to adopt that, and you're an example. Like I think it was Forbes or like or Time magazine, a very important magazine that were interviewing you about
Yes.
this lifestyle that you. Last week I was talking to you, and you were like, "I'm in Alaska. I don't have that much internet. Next week we can talk." Tell me a little bit
It was
more about
horrible.
that.
Okay, so yeah, I actually travel full time. So I travel a lot, and often people find that very admirable, and they go, "Oh, I wish I can travel full time." And my response to that is, that's really not my goal, and that's not necessarily something I'm proud of. What I'm very happy, and the important point to notice here, is that I do what I love doing, and a byproduct of that is the fact that I have no commitment to a specific location, and I can travel when I want. I would give up traveling any day for sticking to the things that I love doing. So they work hand in hand. And that's part of my breaking 9 to 5 work model that I'm actually helping people now. I'm working on a book and I'm working on a series called Breaking 9 to 5, where I teach people how to implement, my methods of business and how to get clients in my unique ways. And as a byproduct of this, they're able to move around. So I am a nomad, but I do currently live in Washington. And I've traveled, quite a bit in the past 2-3 years. And, we're heading into a world where you really got to, it's no longer that you go to university, you specialize in something, you hone in on a very specific skill, and then that gives you a secure position in the economy for the rest of your life. That's changing, right? Because technology is moving so quickly that it's becoming harder and harder enough for us to hypothesize and to guesstimate what industries are going to be relevant in the next 2 or 3 years. And the problem here now is that if you focus too much on a specific skill set, you're going to render yourself obsolete. It could be because of a pandemic that can ruin the environment in which you can work in, or it could be because AI will render your job obsolete. So it's important you invest in a wider array of skills, or you invest in the kind of tools that have a wide array of applications. And a good example of this would be to invest in the tech domain. So if you're referring to my recent article on Forbes, I was discussing how to invest in something called a career portfolio. It's where you don't necessarily have a specific job on the 9 to 5 at a corporate company, but you invest in yourself and you develop multiple streams of revenue. And one of the good ways to do that is to invest in skills that don't have constraints. They don't require you to be at a specific place at a specific time. And I think the tech domain is a great place for people to invest in. So if people are trying to get control of their future and they are trying to find a financial option that makes them happy, because here's the litmus test. I mean, you need to ask yourself if you enjoy doing what you're doing every morning. And if you've gone through quite enough of days where you're just unhappy, I think maybe it's time to take another career. And you need to realize how important this is. You can take the bus at 6 in the morning, on a Monday morning, and you can realize that not everyone is happy going to work. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand why people want vacation, right? You should be doing whatever you can so you can do more of what you want to do. So, if you're in a 9 to 5 and you're unhappy, my advice to you is to be strategic. Not everyone has the luxury to quit their job cold turkey, but you need to ask yourself, how much do you really want to course correct and to put yourself in a place that makes you financially happy and you do the stuff you enjoy? Are you willing to give up your 8 hours of sleep every day? Are you willing to move back into your mom's house and save on rent so you can afford to hone the right skills and develop the right skills to practice your own profession that makes you happy, right? You have to go through what are you willing to give up, because everyone wants to be successful. Everyone wants to do things they enjoy doing, but you have to be willing to work for it. So, if you are in a 9 to 5 and you want to break out of that, if you are in a job you don't like, but it pays your bills, you've got to quickly understand that this is just a means to an end, right? Continue your job, but when you go home, you've got the whole night. You've got from 6 to midnight to work on a new set of skills. You've got from 6 to midnight to understand how the stock market works and start making investments. You've got 6 to midnight to go on YouTube and learn how to make websites and make a few bucks over the weekend. Because once you start there, and you have enough of a groundwork to offer some service in the market, you will constantly realize you're being thrown around. And you'll never know where you'll end up in 2-3 years, but you've got to start somewhere.
I think it's great advice, Mikey. Following that idea, can you give us a short advice for people that want to do that? What keeps you up working in something independently? You mentioned a few things that you like it, that you enjoy it, but it's hard. It's still hard, Mikey. I know that it's hard to wake up every morning and not know. Right now, maybe it's not, but in the beginning, it was with Israel News. I remember that you asked me to be your partner and stuff. In the beginning, we didn't see any traction for a month, 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah,
I got tired, and you kept going for 7 years. I didn't have the motivation you did.
Exactly.
What's your secret?
It's pure stubbornness. I mean, it's got to be a healthy dose of stubbornness. But I will say this: when you're entering the workforce, you just graduated college. It's a trap. They tell you, you have a starting salary of $90,000, $100,000 working at one of these top tier companies, and they have all the benefits and the stability from the get-go. But when you grow in those companies, you're not growing exponentially. You're growing in a linear fashion, and you taper off after a few years. Right? There's odd few exceptions, but I'm talking about a general sense here. You're not making $4 or $5 million after 5 years from working at Google, right? Now, why it's a trap is because people who are doing those plans don't end up happy. Most of them don't, right? And again, working for yourself is not meant for everyone. But if you're unhappy working for the 9 to 5 corporation, you hate to forget about your dreams. And it's very hard for you to have the determination to work for 2-3 years with being severely undervalued, with getting paid 4 times less than your colleagues and working 5 times harder than them. But if you're willing to stick through that for 3-4 years, and that's how long it can often take, and that's how long it took me, you will see an inflection point. And now you're engaging with a model that has way more traction. First of all, when you do what you love, you do it 10 times better. And when you do what you love, you get to offer things in the market that other people don't offer. That's the real secret here. You want to find a way to be exceptional in the market in one way or another. Because once you're exceptional, you have more leverage in negotiations, you have more leverage in deals, and you're able to charge more because it's harder for people to replace you. So my advice to people is to really assess whether you're happy or not. And for some people, and this isn't a good or a bad thing, it's literally how you're wired. For some people, working the 9 to 5 and having that stability is good for them. There are those people, you message them Friday at 5:30. They go, "Oh, my work email is, I don't have access to it. I'll respond to you on Monday at 9 a.m." For people who are happy doing that, that is great. I don't recommend they do anything differently. But for people who aren't happy, you need to make a plan. You're not supposed to go crazy. Because you have a life, you have to pay rent, and it's easier said than done for people who have a family. But you have way more free time than you think. And it's not rocket science here. It comes down to whether you really, really want it. You're willing to give up on your social life for a year. If you're willing to move back at your parents' home so you don't have to pay rent. If you're willing to not party all the time. If you're willing to do nothing but study from 6 to 12 every night, you'd be amazed how much you can learn in 3-4 months of doing that. And you'd be amazed how much more control you have on your life once you do that for 3-4 months.
Thank you so much, Mikey. It was a pleasure to
Yeah.
have you here. I have to say that I know Mikey for already 10 years almost. He did our first
10
website,
years?
I
Oh,
think,
wow.
or 8.
Yeah.
He
I
made
mean, it's
our
definitely good to see you, David. And you
What?
look as young as you looked. You look as young as you looked at YU.
You do
So
too. You do.
yeah. We're aging well, I hope.
And every time that I see articles, like it's crazy how do they reach to you? Like I'm very curious for the last question. How do they
Right.
reach to you? Like how did they hear about you? Like for example, Forbes in the article that you just wrote, or it's
Right.
insane. Like I lost count, but every time that I see in your profile that you were interviewed by like a huge TV channel, or you have your own podcast and you interview amazing and very important and famous people.
Right.
How did you do it? How did they hear about
How
you?
do I do it? Right. So I really leverage social media effectively. And there is no one social media platform. It changes over time. So Instagram at some point was pretty good, but it's a little oversaturated now. And I'm getting a lot of return from doing outreach on LinkedIn. So my plan is I don't reach out to people saying, "Hey, do you want to interview me?" That never works. But what I do is I build relationships with people and I offer them value and I network with people and I try really hard to show them that I'm doing something unique, and people reach out to you. When you really find a way to stand out from everyone else, people will reach out to you and they will want to know more. It's just how the world works. So for people who are trying to get noticed, become unique, and then also leverage social media effectively, because that's your microphone to announce what you do.
Great. Thank
Also
you
reach out
so
to me.
much.
I can maybe help you.
Well,
Yeah.
if someone is interested in reaching out to you to use your service, how can they reach you?
Yeah, and they don't have to frame it as business. They're always welcome to reach out and ask questions. It'll be my pleasure. You can learn more about me on my website, Michael Perez, MichaelPeres.com. You can search for me on LinkedIn, Michael Perez. You can search for me on Instagram, Mikey, Mikeyperes. Wherever you do reach out, feel free to send me a DM. It'll be my pleasure to help you where I can.
Thank you so much. Now we have to have another interview next time to know how can it be that you fit so much in 24 hours. I know that you sleep very little, but that's another
Yeah.
topic of
You
conversation.
asked me if I still have crazy hours. Yeah, just to answer your question, my hours are actually a little better than before. I have more structure in my life now.
But
I've learned a lot since my YU days, and I've learned that working till 6 a.m. every day works for. I mean, maybe I'm getting older, but it's. I like to wake up a little earlier. I get a lot more done earlier than later.
It's great. It's great, Mikey.
Yeah.
You lived with me at some point, and it was great to have a friend that you would come back.
Oh God, don't even remind me.
And he was there. All right, Mikey.
Good old days.
We went to Chicago together also. You remember? It was great.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll bump into each other sometime soon. Thank you again for having me.
Hopefully. Thank you very much to be with me and to fit me in your busy schedule at these late nights of late time of the night. And hopefully we'll be in touch. Bye, Mikey.
You know it, brother.